Ready? Dr. White, do you have anyone in the lineup? And you need to take your mute off.
Yep, we're ready to begin. Our first speaker is Sarah Levine.
You have 3 minutes, and I will let you know when time has expired.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
My name is Sarah Levine. I'm a reading specialist at Barnard School, and I've been teaching for over 20 years. I'm here to talk about the reading crisis in our schools. At the last Board of Education meeting, data was presented that shows that approximately 70% of our K-5 students are not reading on grade level. We need to do better for our students. COVID may have exacerbated the low scores, but they existed well before COVID. A quick search of SBAC data shows that about 70% of our students were scoring below proficient well before COVID existed. In New Haven's strategic plan, it calls for having 80% of students reading on grade level by 2024. How are we going to make this happen? Certainly not by doing more of the same thing we have been doing for years, the practices that clearly haven't worked. What is it that we've been doing? New Haven has been using a model of instruction called balanced literacy for many years. Under the balanced literacy philosophy, children learn to read by reading and engaging in reading activities. They may be taught some phonics, but it's not systematic. After doing research, I was alarmed to learn that the brain science on how people learn to read does not line up to a balanced literacy approach. If I wanted to teach my students to read, research said that I needed to teach them using direct, explicit, and systematic instruction. As I read more, I learned that the balanced literacy lessons I was teaching were actually teaching my students the strategies of poor readers, like looking at the picture and the first letter of a word and guessing the word, instead of looking at all of the letters and sounding out the word. I now know that the best way to teach all of our students to read is structured literacy. With structured literacy, teachers introduce new concepts and skills in a logical order. They teach in an explicit way that fully explains concepts and skills. Teachers also continually check in on students' understanding. Structured literacy encompasses all of the important pieces of teaching reading, including phonics and comprehension. And like any good method, it encourages the use of culturally relevant texts. Research by many prominent scientists and educators in the field of reading shows that we can teach 95% of our students to read using a structured literacy method, while only about 30 to 40% of our students will learn to read using a balanced literacy approach. This begs the question, with a clear reading crisis in New Haven schools, why haven't we switched to a structured literacy approach? Doing the same thing we have been doing for years is not going to change outcomes. Let's do what's right for our students by leaving balanced literacy behind and adopting a more equitable and inclusive model, structured literacy. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Oren Lieber-Katz.
Yes, hello. My name is Oren. I'm a New Haven resident, and I'm a member of the New Haven Climate Movement. I'm testifying today to make the case for why New Haven Public Schools have both a responsibility to treat climate change as an emergency, as well as a massive opportunity to lead the city in addressing the climate crisis. I'm a geologist, and I've studied how life throughout Earth history has responded to environmental change. Often, dramatic changes in climate have looked bleak for species, killing off ecosystems and inducing stress on individuals. This is true in our times as well. Because of our increasingly unstable climate, students today face a dangerous future of destructive storms, rising seas, dirty air and water, and blistering heat waves. And students know that. NPR reports that 60% of young people describe being very or extremely worried about climate change, and that 45% said that this anxiety impacts their day-to-day lives. Furthermore, 65% said that they feel that the institutions representing them are failing to take action to ensure a habitable future planet. This board has a responsibility to show New Haven students that schools are on their side when it comes to climate change. You also have a responsibility to teach your students how to be leaders in building a sustainable world. This mission takes the form of curricula, yes, but it also means making schools themselves into models for climate action and sustainability. If this board decides to publicly declare a climate emergency, to commit to eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, to electrifying buildings and transportation, and to sourcing food sustainably, you can motivate New Haven students to be a part of the climate solution instead of succumbing to climate doom. As the institutions closest to young people, schools are uniquely positioned today to show students that there is a way forward despite the challenges ahead. At the next BOE meeting, the New Haven Climate Movement plans to propose a resolution declaring climate change to be an emergency and requiring NHPS to make plans to adapt to the climate crisis. The New Haven Board of Alders already passed a similar resolution, including committing to eliminating citywide emissions by 2030. The public school system needs to join this city effort to make sustainability a reality and not just an idea. Passing this resolution is an important step in showing students and all New Haven residents what a greener future can look like. While Earth's history has shown us that climate change can devastate species, it can also catalyze new adaptations that have led to unprecedented growth. 650 million years ago, for example, a relatively quick shift in the climate caused the Earth to be completely covered in ice. However, research has shown us that this seeming catastrophe actually coincided with the evolution of multicellular life deep in the ocean, where individual cells discovered for the first time that they could achieve way more together than they ever could alone. Similarly, in addressing our current changing climate as the emergency that it is, we have the potential to show students and future generations what can be accomplished when institutions respond strongly to these big challenges. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Timothy Gorsh.
You may start.
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can assume that we can hear you. We'll let you know if we can't. Just start speaking.
All right, cool. Sorry. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to listen to what I have to say. My name is Dr. Timothy Gersh. I'm a science teacher at a K-8 school in New Haven, and I've been teaching 7th and 8th grade for 8 years. Prior to this, I did scientific research at various labs in New York and New Jersey and taught perception and neuroscience at the university level. My main focus as a science teacher is teaching my students scientific skills such as how to design and conduct an experiment. Along the way, students have to do some amount of reading and writing, especially when completing assignments. From the very beginning of my middle school teaching, I noticed the great difficulty students have demonstrating basic reading and writing skills. Right off the bat, the students struggled to answer incomplete sentences. On a daily basis, students are involved in doing hands-on experiments in my class, but I also want them to come back and tell me what they've learned from these experiments. So even though they may have learned something important, they have a lot of difficulty putting their thoughts into an organized way that allows them to show that they've actually learned what they set out to learn. Part of science is being able to communicate your results. I wondered what was happening in the younger grades in an attempt to understand why students struggled so much. I thought about my own experience with the process of learning to read and write, first when I was young at a Catholic school, and then later in college when I learned a lot about the psychology of reading and the systematic approach to teaching reading. This was in the 80s and the 90s. I just assumed that something similar was happening in my school and other schools in New Haven because that's what I experienced. But I've come to learn that teachers have not been taught about how the brain learns to read, and that the curriculum in New Haven, which follows a balanced literacy philosophy, doesn't reflect the research either. I know that the teachers at our schools are working hard, but if you look at the numbers, it definitely needs to be questioned what we are asking our teachers to teach. We can't keep doubling down on methods that don't seem to be working and aren't supported by science. From my first day of teaching in New Haven in 2014, I've been encouraged to honestly reflect on my own teaching and admit to myself when certain methods aren't working. We must remember that what we are doing is for the best of our students, even if it means admitting that we need to change. Thank you.
Our next speaker, I'm going to remind our audience, please to name yourself correctly so that we can identify you as you raise your hand. I'm going to give this person a chance to rename themselves, and I'll move on to the next speaker and take them afterwards. Maurice Holness, You may speak.
You can
Good
begin
evening, everyone,
speaking.
and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I decided to speak publicly today in support of the Great Resignation, or maybe to encourage the educators, Dr. Tracy and her team, and the board as well, is to look ahead. Just look ahead. I know Dr. Tracy has previously reported on this, and I just want to encourage or really urge the district to take a proactive approach and being competitive in the district of New Haven. So many times we year after year we suffer from losing valuable educators that are highly trained and highly skilled, that'll leave the district to go to another district or another school, what have you, because they're actually compensated for their worth. And it's just it's a little bit discouraging to have that happen to us year after year, and we really don't do anything about it. So just as a parent in the New Haven public school system, I really want to encourage us to do better, and not to be reactive but proactive. The Great Resignation is here. You folks have been talking about it, but I don't know what exactly is the plan for the district to combat that and make it not a realization, but actually retain our truly strong educators. And it's funny because the testimonies from teachers before me just solidifies that. Here you have teachers coming to a public forum testifying to methods in which we need to improve literacy and so on. And it's just, again, I want to implore the district to be more proactive and really dig deep, because I know that the mayor has made a few budget presentations with more money's coming in from the state, more money's coming in from Yale University. And I really would hate to hear this time around, oh, we don't have the money, because that seems to be the theme. We don't have the money to do what we need to do. But yet we train people and we lose them as we train them, and our community suffers. And before I run out of time, I would be amiss if I didn't acknowledge Mr. Golson. Many would argue that he's the voice of the people, and Mr. Golson it's very heartwarming to see you back. And prayers go out to you and your family. I hope you work through your situation and come back stronger than ever. And with that, I'll say thank you for allowing me to speak.
Our next speaker is Kirsten Hopes McFadden.
Good evening. I would like to reiterate with the previous person who just spoke, and I think he's one of my parents. Welcome back, Darnell Goldson. You've been missed. And I hope you're doing well. I would like to talk about a few things tonight. The district, central office, the Board of Ed needs to come up with a consistent retention policy. We were told that no one would be retained. If that's the case, then that's the case. This should not be laid at teachers' feet. Our job is to teach. Our job is not to determine who is retained and who is not retained, or to develop policy around that. So I would encourage you all to please come up with a policy and be able to present it to parents. The next thing I want to talk about is SEL activities for students, without acknowledging that teachers' wells have run dry. I would say that we are at the point where it is at a crisis for teachers. We all know that if it weren't for students, we wouldn't have jobs. So we don't need to hear that again. I find that insulting. Because guess what? If it weren't for teachers, they wouldn't be taught. It's a truly symbiotic relationship. So we don't need to hear that. What we do need to hear is that not more and more things are put on us when we already can't do what we already have to do now. And for you to acknowledge that and stop asking us to do more and more with no compensation, with no acknowledgement, and not even a thank you. But what I really, really want to talk about is the parking lot at ESAMS. I have come to this board several times to talk about the ice at ESAMS. It is ridiculous. If you're not going to kill us with COVID, I guess you'll kill us with the parking lot. Last Thursday, one of my coworkers, while getting out of her car trying to go to work, fell and had to be rushed to the hospital. She has several injuries, possible concussion, a broken hip. This is ridiculous. When I talked to some of the facilities in the past, they told me,
Fine.
well, can I let in my sentence, Ms. Dr. Joyner?
That's the practice. Yes.
Okay. They told me that the excuse me, I lost my train of thought. They told me that the salt wasn't available to 8 o'clock. Some people get there at 6:30. So either do something about it or give us a delay. You've been put on notice. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Young Kim.
Yes, hi. Hello, my name is Youngin Kim, and I'm a junior at Wilbur Cross High School, and I'm also a part of the New Haven Climate Movement, just like Oren, who spoke earlier. I would like to talk briefly today about the school transportation systems and climate change. Although I walk to and from school, most of my friends take the school bus every day. In the morning and at dismissal, around 50 buses line up in my school's parking lot, dropping off or picking up hundreds of students. According to the US Department of Energy, America's 500,000 school buses contribute to 10.7 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. New Haven also plays no small part in this, with 350 school buses transporting 17,804 kids every day. It is great that the district is able to provide transportation for all of these students, yet we must consider the climate implications of these numbers. New Haven's school buses run on diesel and produce noxious fumes in our city. This is extremely harmful to our community, which already suffers from the 5th highest asthma rates in the nation. We at the New Haven Climate Movement believe that it is important to transition to a greener electric transportation system in our schools. We believe that this can happen through providing free bus passes to students who drive to school, and also transitioning to electric school buses over the next decade. School districts in Connecticut have started this process already, with Middletown and ACES of North Haven purchasing a pilot electric school bus each. Twin Rivers School District in California has 40 electric buses, making it the largest electric school bus fleet in North America. We are not asking the board to spend millions on electric school buses right now. We are asking you to make plans for this transition so that we can keep up as many school districts make this change. Electric school buses are the focus of many initiatives and bills, and even President Biden's $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan allocated $2.5 billion just to electric school buses. These climate aspects of the school system that Oren and I talked about today are only a small part of the many things the board can do to create a healthier, more resilient school system for our students. As Oren mentioned, at the next board meeting, we want to propose the Board of Education Climate Emergency Resolution to you all for passage. This is similar to the emergency resolution we passed through the Board of Alders in 2019, which Mayor Elliker would be very familiar with. But this resolution will be focused on our school system and students. We can email you all the resolution beforehand so you can read over it. And the resolution does not demand immediate funding for climate change, but instead asks the board to make plans for a greener, more climate healthy New Haven school system for the future. We're looking forward to working with you all once again. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Hyplus Williams.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Golson, I'm so happy to see you back. I missed you, and I'm glad you're doing well enough to be back here. And I wish you all the best and hope you get well soon and you could be back 110%. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Madam President, that concludes the hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the board meeting minutes. The first one being for our February 14th meeting. The motion to accept. Mr. Wilcox,
I move we approve the February 14th, 2022 meeting minutes.
second. I'll second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the meeting minutes for the February 14th meeting. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Abstain.
Ms. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore.
He's not here today.
Thank you. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Those minutes pass. And the next one being the February 28th meeting. The motion, Mr. Wilcox,
Yes, I move we approve the February 28th meeting minutes.
for a second.
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker, I guess was first. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the meeting minutes for February 28th. Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Abstain.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Rahman,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so those minutes pass. Next item is the approval of the, personnel report. Dr. Tracy?
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board. Good evening, members of the community who are watching. I would like to present the personnel report for March 14th, 2022, with the exception of the executive management contract renewals, which will be discussed in executive team. So from the section appointment to the end of page 3, I'll ask that the board accept the personnel report in that manner. Thank you.
The motion, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move that we approve the action items of the personnel report with the exception of the executive management contract renewals.
I second.
And properly seconded, any discussion? Dr. Joyner?
Is there a reason that we're excluding the executive management section? I must admit, I wasn't at the last meeting, so.
Because we're going to be discussing them in the executive session first, and then we'll vote on them after.
All right.
Mr. Goldson?
Just for information purposes, the interim principal at Hill House is listed here. Is she a retiree that's being returned temporarily?
Yes.
Ms. Moore? Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, that's Peggy Moore. Was principal in New Haven for many years, high school cross and then Bassick High School junior retirement. She has graciously decided to serve us for the next couple of months while we continue to search for a principal for Hill House.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on the personnel report with the exception of the executive management contract renewals. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Roman,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so the personnel report passes.
Madam
Go ahead, Dr. Tracy.
President, I'd like to bring Miss Peggy Moran just to say a few words of how excited she is. Miss Peggy. Miss Peggy Moore. Where is it? There's Peggy.
Where is she?
Peggy, you're on. Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tracy, and thank you to the board for giving me this wonderful opportunity to come back and work with New Haven students. I don't know if you know this or not, but my passion is working with students. I've done it for a long time and I enjoy it. And I also have to say that it gives me a great honor to be able to say that I have served Wilbur Cross and now James Hill House High School. I thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Thank you.
Hold up.
President, I have a question. Since she served both schools, which is her favorite?
Oh,
That's a trick question. I don't have.
There's a lot of blue and white, Darnell.
Like our kids, we don't have favorites, right?
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you.
She's a consummate educator.
Thank you. Dr. Tracy, please continue with the MOAs.
No, that's my presentation, Madam President.
Okay.
Oh, you mean, well, we voted on that. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam President. Okay. We move on to the approval of the MOAs for April vacation 2022, summer fund 2022, and COVID-related sick days, leave and compensation. It's all in one packet. It was posted, so I am assuming that the board will just vote on the one packet. There's 2 for power union relating to summer and April vacation pay rate in order to attract workers for that program that Ms. Gemma Joseph Lumpkin is running. 2 for teachers union relating to pay rate for summer and April vacation. And the rest deals with the reverse of used sick time and compensation for those who were not paid due to lack of sick time or those who may not have had any sick time during COVID when we as a system actually put them in quarantine or have them isolated. So those are the MOAs.
Okay. Any
I asked
questions?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the MOAs? Mr. Bolton?
You're muted, Darnell.
You're muted, Darnell.
I actually have a question, but I'll move them if you want me to, Madam President. I'll move the approvals of the MOAs for. It's okay moving them all together.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll move the approval of the MOAs for April vacation 2022, summer fund 2022, and COVID-related sick leave and compensation.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton and Dr. Brenner. Go ahead with your question, Mr. Bolton.
Just for the record, how much extra are these initiatives costing us, and how are they funded? Can we get like a 3 or 4 sentence answer to that?
Good question. So until especially the ones for summer and April. We won't know yet until the staff members agree to work, and then we will get the numbers. We are trying to get them ahead of time so we can push these out and start getting to staff to see if they will work in these programs. So we will not have that number yet. As it relates to the others, all of these are coming from the ESSER grant.
Any other discussion, questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the approval of the MOAs, April vacation, summer fun, and the COVID-related sick leave and compensation. Mr. Golson,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Roman,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well, and so MOA is passed. Finance and Operations Committee, Mr. Wilcox.
Yes, thank you very much. First off, I'd like to direct the board's attention to the separate sheet of action items that's included in the board packet. I'm noticing now that on the agenda where they are also listed, we're missing two pieces that we need to vote on tonight. One is an attestation to approve the submission of the Head Start grant. And then the second piece is the healthy food certification statement. And so they're both printed, and I believe this information is also posted publicly, but the separate page of the action items is the correct one. As is usual, if anybody would like anything moved separately, please let me know before the meeting or now. And the first thing I'm going to ask is President Rivera to handle the Head Start grant and the attestation, because out of that $6 million, there is a piece of it that's going to go to Clifford Beers, and I recuse myself on anything related to Clifford Beers due to my spouse's employment there.
Okay, so we can do that first. I will make a motion to accept.
Water, Madam President.
Go ahead, Mr. Colton.
I don't see those in my packet, and I'm probably passing by them, but since they're not on the official agenda, should we amend the agenda to add them both first?
We can do that. It's the, I don't know if you have everything, but it's the one listed. It says action items at the top, March 14, 2022 virtual meeting.
Am I the only one who can't see this, or I don't see it in my I don't see it. I don't see. I mean, if everybody else has it, then fine. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't see it, and if it's not on the official agenda that other people have seen, the public has seen, it has been posted.
Mr. Goldson, it's on the Board of Education meeting agenda. Do you have the agenda?
Yes, I have the agenda.
The Head Start grant is, but the attestation.
Number
is not.
one, the only abstract up there.
Oh,
number
okay. That's what he's talking about? I thought it was something different.
But there's also an attestation. There's also the attestation that's on the action items sheet, but not on the agenda.
All right, well, okay, thank you.
Attorney Alexianis, you have your hand up.
I'm wonder how this compares to the item that's posted on the webpage for tonight's meeting under the action items tab. Is that the correct list? And it's the agenda that's missing those two items?
The agenda is missing just the one item.
Yes, the action item on the website that's posted has the attestation, as well as the abstract. So it's just the agenda that's missing.
The attestation, right?
Yes.
It was posted. Okay.
So I think there's no harm in amending the agenda to add that item because it's not on the actual agenda item. I think it's transparent as it is because it's posted in a different place, but you're certainly welcome to amend the agenda to just dot your i's and cross your t's.
Do you want to make the motion, Mr. Bolton, to amend the agenda?
If that doesn't include does that include the issue that the chairman has a problem with? The organization, he's not I'm asking, is he not amending it because he has a conflict there, or?
I'm happy to amend the agenda to include the item, but if I may, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we add to the agenda the attestation to approve submission of Head Start grantee and the healthy food certification that are listed on the action items that are posted.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay,
Just for
so-
clarification, the Madam Chair, the action items we are talking about are an abstract. After the abstract, it's B, attestation, and just for those members we're not sure where they are located, and then F, healthy food certification.
Yep.
That's where that is in the action items, and that's what we are referring to.
That is correct. Okay, so seeing no further discussion, we'll vote to amend the agenda to include those two items, the attestation to approve submission of Head Start grantee and the healthy food certification. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Turn off the mute.
I'm sorry, I was on another screen trying to look that up. Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Roman,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
I guess yes. Yeah.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
Okay, so the items are now, the agenda has now been amended to include those two items. So now there needs to be a motion to accept. I'll make the motion to accept the abstract one with the attestation to approve the submission of the Head Start grantee.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve abstract one with the item B. Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Recuse.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Haman,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Please proceed, Mr. Wilcox.
All right, thank you. I'd like to make a motion here, and that's that we also approve the 4 agreements, the 1 contract, the 1 change order, and the healthy food certification.
Second,
I second that.
thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the remaining F&O items. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Roman,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So those items pass. students report.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. First thing I wanted to ask was when we like agree on something or accept like a motion or something, when does it usually go into effect? Like, does it have like a certain date, or because I'm confused on how that works?
Immediately.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
It depends on the item, but yeah, for the most part, it's immediately when the contract is signed.
All right, thank you. And then something I wanted to address was when you guys send out emails to the parents or whoever you have as like the parent or guardian for like the things you have going on in New Haven Public Schools, I feel like a lot of those things are not getting back to the students. Recently, last week, I had a adult come in my school and she talked to us and she was like, I'm not having students sign up for any of the programs that we're offering and I'm really upset about it. But the thing is, students are not receiving those things. I don't know if you guys are sending those things to our teachers, but we're not receiving those things and we're not able to, like get active and like join things if we're not receiving the information. So I just wanted to know if you were only specifically sending that to the parent or guardian or to the teachers or how that like works.
Dr. Tracy, can somebody respond to them?
Thanks, Mishai. I hope I say that correctly. When we send information out, you're correct. It goes straight to, depending on the information, goes to principals, all assistant principals, all the administrators, and then if it's important to go to everybody, we send to all, which encompasses all workers in the learning community. I don't think it goes to students, and you're right. That's something we maybe need to because we don't have all students' email addresses to do that. Dr. White.
Yes, usually when things are directed for students, it's usually sent to principals, administrators, and counselors who can then in turn push it out through the Google Classroom to students. And we can work on making sure that we make sure that's efficient and happening so that students are getting anything. And at your convenience, if you could let me know what was missed, email me and let me know what was missed, and we can look into that and make sure students are getting the information.
Okay, thank you. And then one more thing. I know at Hill House, many students are currently struggling with math. And I wanted to know if you guys like had anything out there for students that are struggling in school, because many of us will reach out to teachers and ask for help and then not receive anything in return. And I know a lot of us are like, we're really hard on ourselves when it comes to school. So like, do you have any opportunities for students to get extra help if we're not receiving that in school?
Yes,
I'm so happy.
I'd be happy to.
Velasquez,
I'm so happy that you, I'm sorry.
Hold on. Go ahead, Ms. Velasquez, and then Ms. Redhand.
Yeah, so there is actually an online intervention program that we've purchased for 6 through 12 that we're trying to send out a lot of information on. And so it hasn't reached you yet. It's IXL. We've been pushing that out all year, and we're starting to see some really good results with that. So I'll definitely make sure that we craft a communication again to make sure all students have access to their online accounts for that. As well as reaching out to teacher for very specific classroom assistance. But that at least is one piece that we know is helping us with interventions to help catch up students. Again, it's called IXL.
Mishai, I'm so happy that you mentioned that. As you saw tonight, the board voted in the new interim principal at Hill House. One of the things I will be doing with her is reviewing the budget to see where opportunities exist so that we can have tutors available for students as well. So if you know of any students that may be struggling in the school in a particular content area, please make sure you make the principal or assistant principal aware of it, and we're going to try to get some tutorial support for students as well.
I'm going to have also Ms. Gemma Joseph Lumpkin to share with you their information because we have a robust homework help hotline going where we have grad students from Yale University working with students. So Ms. Jevon, could you please share so Michelle, I can have that and share with students gladly.
Yes, and I will put my information in the chat too, so you can follow up with me. We have a robust program that's available to all students to simply just call in on a Google call, and they get whatever supports they need to get through their homework. We also, their homework with the support of Yale tutors. We also have a similar program with Southern Connecticut State University. We get extremely good feedback from our students and our families that that program is helpful to them. And so, and we announce it regularly on our, from Parent Link. So families are aware that the program is available, but I'll be happy to share more information about that with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Joyner?
I'd like to say something in support of what Mashad just raised. The students I'm hearing for are having the most problems in mathematics and science. And the research about learning says that math is almost taught exclusively in the school. And so that depends on the relationship between the teacher and the student, as well as the resources around them. And I think that we're going to have to think systemically about how we try to catch some of these kids up, particularly in some of the higher order math classes, like calculus and trigonometry and geometry and what have you, because they've lost a lot of time. I think the other issue, and we're going to address this in teaching and learning, is the whole notion of how to teach reading. That's been a controversy for the last probably 100 years. And we will bring some information back to the board, probably meeting after next about that, because it's politically charged as well. So Michelle, let me commend you for advocating for the students in that respect, and also ask the board to consider how do we respond systemically to the learning loss that's exacerbated by what our kids have already had to deal with. We're going to have to reconfigure what we do and how we do it and who we use to do it, particularly when we hire people outside of the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Does that conclude your report, Ms. Ramon? Thank you. Dr. Joyner, teaching and learning.
I don't have any report at this time. I've been out of it for a while, and we didn't have the meeting this week because of the board retreat, but we're going to rev back up and get going again.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Superintendent's report, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I must say that very quickly, just a quick report. The COVID cases in our schools, we just had 8 cases reported last week. There has been a lot of question around the water filter installation, and I just want to give an update that we did purchase the water filters. They're the ones that use a sensor so that students can fill up, but they're not installed in all schools. Right now, we encountered some problems that I was told they have to actually jackhammer out concrete walls, and then when they get behind those where the current water fountains are in some places, that there's no electrical outlet in which to install these because they were somewhat different. So I reached out to collaborate with our Director of Public Health, and we're able to open up back the water fountains in the school, which is good news. So last week, they should have made sure that they open up and have that water running for a while so that students can go back and use the water fountain. So that was one plus there for us. Just wanted to say that that's in place. We know students are gearing up now for smarter balance assessment. This is an assessment that there seemed to be some controversy over, but this is something we have to give. All 169 school systems and towns in Connecticut have to give that smarter balance assessment. Even though we know kids have suffered learning loss, we still have to administer the test. We're planning for summer 2022. Plans are underway. Plans for April break program is also underway. We are highlighting reading across New Haven. We have purchased libraries for classrooms, and we're now going to purchase libraries for students to take home using those monies. We want to avoid spending our monies on personnel and spend it on things that our students can benefit from a lot. So that's where we're putting a lot of our spending. Day of Hope and Healing for Friday has been planned, and I hope that that day will go off without any glitches or what have you in technology. That's something we're trying to do for our students. Vacancies for teachers. Majority of the vacancies are still in special education, and I know there are recruitment efforts underway, and I know Miss Tiffany Jackson have worked hard in trying to also get support for special education. That is something we're looking at very, very carefully around what's happening to special education teachers. And I know they're going to systems where they believe that their class load is smaller, and of course it pays better. I just wanted to say that. That's my quick update. Now I'll turn over to Mr. Ken Matthews, who's going to give like just a top level view of the new program. It's not a new curriculum, but the new program that we have to support the curriculum that's called iReady. If you can recall, the board had us investing a couple of $1 million in this program for K-5. This is the first year of implementation. So we have had about what, 2, 3, 4 months? 4 months of implementation and 2 sets of data to be had from that. So Mr. Matthews, could you please share high leverage for me, please? Thank you.
Can't hear. You need it.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ken Matthews. I'm the math supervisor for New Haven Public Schools. And Dr. Tracy has asked me to share not just about iReady, but our testing data. So I have quite an interesting presentation that I hope you will like. So I'm going to share my screen. So the math program that we use K-5 is called iReady, and it's very comprehensive. It provides us not just with an excellent K-5 program with both electronic and print student materials, but it also provides us with a screening test and an individualized instruction program for our students. And this is it's very important to understand what an individualized instruction program is. So in September, our students took a screening test, K-5 using iReady. Our students in 612 also took a screening test using a different program that I'm also going to present with the permission of the superintendent. So what we learned is that we were normally accustomed to seeing about 2/3 of our students working below grade level in the beginning of the school year, but it was quite remarkable and shocking what we saw this year. So if you could look at this data, in the fall, we saw that approximately 96% of our students were working below grade level, either 61% were significantly below or more than 2 grade levels below, and 35% were at least 1 grade level below, and only 4% of our students were working on grade level. But we do have a very rich standards-based rigorous curriculum. So, but our motto this year and our mantra this year is that in order for us to make up for the lost learning due to COVID, our students need to progress more than 1 year in 1 year. And what I have right now is the winter report of what has happened over the first half year. So we can see that where in the fall, we had 61% of our students more than 2 grade levels below, working more than 2 grade levels below. Now we have 45%. It's nothing to brag about, but it is progress. Where before we had 35% of our students at 1 grade level below, now we have 44%. And the lion's share of those students came from the ones who were more than 2 grade levels below. And where we had 4% of our students working on or above grade level, now we have 11% of our students working on or above grade level. And if we continue at this rate, this is for K-5, we would expect over 20% of our students to be back on grade level by the end of the school year. So we can see right here, this data is broken up by grade. We have an individualized learning plan for each student where we measure whether or not they've achieved 1 year worth of growth. But since we want them to progress more than 1 year in 1 year, we also created what's called a stretch growth for them. So in kindergarten, we see that more than half of our kindergarten students at the mid-year had already achieved 53% worth of a year's growth or better. So that's the median, means the exact center. So 50% of students achieve 53% of a year's worth of growth or more. We were very pleased with that. In grade 1, 55%, in grade 44%. And we're not happy with our grade 2 results. What we found when our kids in grade 2 came back from school was that they were, their skill levels were kindergarten and below because they had missed so much in-class instruction. Grade 3 is where we would want 50% of students have achieved 50% worth of their growth goals. In grade 4, we're thrilled. More than 50% of students have achieved 61% of their growth goal. And in grade 5, more than 50% of students have achieved at least 55% of their growth goal. Now, this column shares the percentage of students who have already met a year's worth of growth. In kindergarten, it's 19%, first grade, 20%, second grade, 17%, third grade, 19%, fourth grade, 27%, and fifth grade, 28%. These are students, I'm going to say it again, have already achieved a year's worth of growth. And over here, we have the students who have already achieved more than 1 year in 1 year. Of course, these are small, but because it's only halfway through the year, but we're very, very optimistic that these numbers are going to be quite significant. Okay, here's our data for our comparative data from fall to winter for kindergarten and first grade. We saw that in the fall, 94% of kindergartners were working below grade level and 6% were on grade level. We don't have more than 2 years below grade level for kindergartners because that would take them back to the womb. In winter, we see we went from 94 to 76% of our kindergartners working 1 year below grade level. And now we're up to 24%. 1/4 of our kindergartners are on or above grade level. Very happy about that. We can see in first grade, we started off with 41% of our kids, 2 grade levels or below. We've improved to just 19%. We have 70% of our first graders 1 grade level below. But again, based on the progress that we've made in half a year, we expect that to gain significantly. In grade 2, this is our tough grade. We still have 51% of our second graders more than 2 grade levels below and 42% 1 grade level below. The data is slightly better. Well, actually, it's about the same for third grade, but it just seems like we're not making as much traction because in third grade, we started off with so many more than 2 grade levels below. And then our fourth and fifth grade data, we went from 75% more than 2 grade levels below to 56% and 74 to 64. But if we look at, we have already, we went from 4% to 10% of our fourth graders on or above grade level and 5% to 10% of our fifth graders on or above grade level. So we've more than doubled for fourth and fifth grade in half a year, and we expect to double that again in the second half. Now we have our data for economically disadvantaged. We see, oh, excuse me. For economically disadvantaged, more than half of our economically disadvantaged students are 52%. I'm sorry, more than half of our economically disadvantaged students have achieved 52% worth of a year's growth. And almost 1/4 of them have already met a year's worth of growth. This is really positive data. 4% have already met their stretch goal as well, which means more than 1 year in 1 year. If we look by gender, there is no statistically significant data with regard to male and female students, and we're also thrilled about that. So about 50% of our males and females have achieved 53% of a year's worth of growth. And 5 and 6% of them have achieved more than 1 year in 1 year. And if we look at this data, about a quarter of them have already met 1 year's worth of growth. So again, very positive right here. By special education, we would definitely expect to see a difference between our special education and non-special education students, and we do. With regard to what percent has achieved the percentage of a year's worth of growth. So our non-special ed kids, more than 50% of non-special ed kids have achieved 55% of a year's worth of growth, where more than 50% of special education students have achieved 39% of a year's worth of growth. But what's really, really interesting is that, once again, almost a quarter of all special ed students have already achieved a year's worth of growth. And with regard to meeting their stretch goals, they compete with our non-special ed students. In terms of English language learners, once again, these students are doing fantastic. More than 50% of them have achieved 52% of a year's worth of growth, and 23% have completed a year's worth of growth already, and 4% have achieved their stretch goals. So we're looking very little difference between our English language learners and our non-English language learners. And I attest that because we still adhere to the principles of Singapore math, where we introduce mathematics using concrete and virtual manipulatives. We move to pictorial representations, and then we teach the math in the abstract. And that really and truly benefits our English language learners. In the country of Singapore, mathematics is taught in English, which is the second language for students. So our curriculum is designed to be very friendly for English language learners. If we look by race, we see that there definitely is an achievement gap, but it's not as huge as it used to be. So if we use we can take a look at our African-American students. More than 50% of our African-American students have achieved 52% worth of growth. And if we compare them to white students, more than 50% of white students have achieved 54% worth of growth. And if we look at the percentage who met a year's worth of growth already, African-American students are ahead of our white students, although it's not statistically significant, by 1%. If we look at our students who identify as more than one race, the data is very similar. And then this is the way the state requires us to report, and it's also the way the iReady program reports out. We don't put Hispanic and Latino students in race. It's how they report. This isn't my decision. It's how the state requires it, and it is also how the company reports it. So when we look at students who identify as Hispanic or Latino, 50% of students have achieved, or more than 50% of students have achieved more than 50% of growth. And 50% of non-Hispanic or Latino students have achieved 55% worth of growth. So there is a slight achievement gap there, as well as if we look at the percentage of students who have met a year's worth of growth. Now, here is a message of hope. The iReady program has, part of the iReady program is called My Path, and that's the Individualized Learning Program. And iReady recommends that students spend 30 minutes a week on their individualized learning program. But since we need to progress more than 1 year in 1 year, we're recommending 40%. So 32% of our K-5 students spent at least 40 minutes per week on their individualized learning instruction. Of those students, 96% of them showed 50% of a year's worth of growth in the first half of the year. And 54%, which is more than half, already achieved their 1 year growth goal. That is remarkable. And yes, the data is not good when we look at how many students are 2 years or more below grade level, or even 1 year below grade level. But we seem to have a silver bullet here. When we can get students on My Path for more than 40 minutes a week, they progress. So that's the message that we need to get out, not just in our schools, but in our communities as well. And I'm working with a committee of math coaches that's taking this very seriously, and we're working extremely hard. We're getting ready to partner up with Gemma and Danny Diaz, and pretty soon all the community leaders will be aware of this. All right, so now I'm going to present the 6 through 12 data. This year in grades 6 through 12, we adopted IXL, which does the same thing that iReady does, just for the older students. It tests them in the beginning of the year. It sets up an individualized learning program with them, as well as growth goals. The data that IXL presents is not as robust at the district level, but in terms of what the teachers can see for their classrooms, it's amazing. So I have some overall data here, and this is, again, it's fairly dismal. If we look, these are the percentage of students working on grade level in the fall. And this is the percentage of students on the left, and on the right is the percentage of students working on grade level in the second half of the year. Now, this looks horrible, but please remember that many of our students, more than half, were more than 2 grade levels below. So we really can't expect students to achieve 3 grade levels in 1 year, although some will, but the majority of them will not. But once again, our mantra is students need to progress more than 1 year in 1 year. So we do have some hopeful data. So in terms of median growth, we see that more than 50% of 6th graders have achieved at least 56% of a year's worth of growth. More than 50% of 7th graders have achieved at least 61% of a year's worth of growth, and so forth. So we see that these numbers are, we would expect to see 50%, but we see these numbers are over 50% for each and every grade. This is the percentage of students who have shown at least half a year of growth. So we, once again, it's more than 50%, although we would love it to be all of them. It is not, but it certainly allows us to disaggregate our interventions when so many students are progressing at a rate that is reflective of the rest of the country. And then the last column shows the percentage of students for each grade who have already achieved 1 year's worth of growth. So if I reflect back, if we look back at, I'm jammed up here, so I won't. If we look back, we expect by the end of the year to see over 10% in each grade level of students working on grade level. Now, 10% is nothing like we used to see before COVID, but definitely it's a step in the right direction. All right, so once again, we have another message of hope with our students for grades 6 through 12. 24% of our students have spent greater than or equal to 40 minutes per week on IXL. Of those students, 92% have shown more than half a year's worth of growth in half a year, and 47% of them have already shown a year's worth of growth. So that's the silver bullet, more than 40 minutes a week on IXL. And once again, we need to push this message out into the community. I just want to show you quickly where we keep all of our testing data for the district so that teachers can, coaches and teachers can very easily access it. This is I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but our kindergarten and first graders take a performance test called, that's based on the Common Core standards. And that's the data right here and over here too. IABs are practice tests for the Smarter Balance that students take 3 times a year. Our students in grades 1 through 8 take fact fluency, and we want all students to be at goal on fact fluency by the end of the year. And then here's our iReady and IXL data that I've already presented. And then our high school students each quarter take a skills fluency test. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Now, in addition to that, Dr. Tracy, I told her we have some great news from the math department that I wanted to share with the Board of Education. And I have several members of the math department are watching today, so I really want to highlight some of their significant accomplishments. we have this amazing partnership with Albertus Magnus. About 10 years ago, I went to the director of education for Albertus and I said, teachers in New Haven need a master's degree in STEM education. And she assembled a team from New Haven and from Albertus. And within 2 years, we had our first cohort in the program. We're now on the 6th cohort. And some of these students have just achieved rockstar status. I mean, they're students at Albertus, but they're teachers in New Haven. So I just want to highlight 6 of them. At first, we have Courtney Sutherland. Courtney Sutherland was in the first cohort. He is now on faculty. He was a special education teacher at Hill Central. He's now the math coach at King Robinson. He's also on faculty at Albertus, teaching in the master's degree in STEM ed, and he's also teaching education courses at Southern Connecticut. None of this would have been available to him if he wasn't in this master's degree in STEM education. Kim Rogers was a librarian after completing the degree. She's now the lead library media specialist for the district, and she has used many of her skills from this program to help her. Zanya Collier, hopefully some of you watch Channel 3 News. Zanya Collier was adopted by a television program with Young Sheldon. I had a memory lapse, sorry about that. And they purchased for her all this amazing STEM equipment that she's using with her students. She's a social studies teacher, but they were actually able to make smart posters for Black History Month using this amazing technology that she won through Donors Choose being adopted by the Young Sheldon program. And I have the link there. If you want to watch the newscast that covered her classroom and her, the link is right there. Tyler Mitchell is this great young man from Conti School who's in the program, and he's now teaching an academy, trying to really expand the amount of technology that's used to teach secondary mathematics. And then Julia Clow and Samantha Jennings are 2 partners in crime, and they have graduated from the program and they teach pre-K, and they now are teaching this amazing academy for pre-K teachers on how to bring STEM education to 3- and 4-year-olds. And I think I've learned more from them than they have learned in the degree as to what STEM education could really mean for pre-K students. The state this year started a new program called the Noise Math Teacher Leaders, and they threw it out to every school district in the state that's an alliance district. So that's about 36 school districts. And they only chose 20 teachers for the program out of 36 school districts who had math teachers that could apply. And it comes with 5 years worth of leadership training and a $50,000 stipend for each teacher. So it was amazing that 3 out of the cohort of 20 teachers who were chosen, 3 were from New Haven. We just hit the jackpot with this. So we have Justin Wentworth from Davis Street School, Sarah Cole from Conti, and Will McKinney from Easums are our very proud noise math teacher leaders from New Haven Public Schools. And Audra Forstrom from Hill House, we nominated her for Cambium Learning's Essential Educators Award. Audra is the lead math teacher at Hill House. She's a complete unsung hero. If you walk into her classroom and she's not teaching, her room is still filled with students. She helps her peers. She helps the district in so many ways. So we nominated her for this award. Cambium only awarded 3 teachers in the country this award, and Audra was one of the recipients. So of course, we're definitely very proud of her. And lastly, Alyssa Levy, who's a math teacher at Easums, her class competed for an achievement award with Khan Academy. It was a national competition. Her class won, and they provided her classroom with all this amazing ergonomic and brightly colored and fun furniture for her students to learn math and STEM as well. So we're so proud of all of these teachers. And that ends my presentation. I'm going to stop the share. And I guess
Thank you, Mr. Matthews, for this presentation. And as you know, this is the last presentation probably that Mr. Matthews will have. He's retiring. So thank you, Mr. Matthews, for ending with sharing some of the successes from the math department. I need to say the data shared. I don't want for folks to say this is where New Haven Kids K-5 children are at. No, that's just one data point. This is according to the iReady and the iExcel data that they have to share. And from that information, the only way to go for New Haven is up. I expect you to laugh on that. But anyway, I got the joke. The only way for New Haven public schools to go.
You didn't hear my chuckle, Dr. Tracy, but it happened.
Okay, so again, these are new programs, iReady, iExcel, that that have been piloted last year. Now they're working on implementation. So everyone knows that when you're implementing a program, it takes a while for us to get at the threshold we're trying to get at. But one great thing about it is going according to individual students' growth goals and not casting everyone in the same basket. So thank you, Mr. Matthews, for sharing. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Joyner and then Mr. Goldson.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Ken Matthews. I remember when he came into the system. He's a tireless worker, really cares about urban young learners. I also like to make a few points about his presentation, as well as the real hardworking teachers that we have in the district that are working day and night to help kids that come to school behind to catch up and even excel. One teacher that was left out was Mr. Rideau from Hill House, whose kids routinely outperform in math competition, kids from the suburbs. And if you ever get a chance, you ought to talk to him and see what he does to get those kids. He's another version of Jaime Escalante, who told the kids in Los Angeles that they all could achieve if they embraced the notion of ganas. And that's a message for every kid, that your hard work, excellence equals effort plus time. And without the effort and without the time, kids can't learn as effectively. But Mr. Matthews, you have given us some stunning data that is correlated with parents supporting kids, kids working hard, teachers teaching effectively. And that's really the formula. I also believe that New Haven has a climate that does not force teachers to do anything against the interests of their students. So if you find you have certain learning issues in your classroom, you're free as a teacher to make adjustments and work with our very able assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction and your subject area people to help you make the adjustments, even if it means like jazz, teaching is improvisational. So even if it means playing the basic song, but moving outside of it from time to time to make sure that you meet your kids. It's also important for families to understand that the average teacher in this district teaches 20 plus kids a day. And that's not an easy task. And it requires a level of discipline on the part of the student, a certain amount of support on the part of the parent. And of course, it provides, it should give us we need to give them the resources they need in order to be effective. And for our students to respect the whole notion of schooling and people that are in front of them to teach them. So Mr. Matthews, I think you're going out with a bang. And I, for one, appreciate the good work you've done in this district. And I hope you won't leave us forever. I hope that you'll drop in every now and then to give us a pat on the back and encourage us to keep on keeping on, as my grandmother would say.
Dr. Joyner.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Goldson.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews, for that insightful presentation. I didn't know you were retiring, so I'm a little disappointed that the math department is going to lose your energy. You apparently have a lot of it. And I want to congratulate all of the people that you highlighted in your report. Those are the people that matter the most, those people that are on the front line with our students doing that work, and I'd like to see more of that. I got a couple of quick questions. What does I stand for in I read?
iReady.
iReady. Yeah, iReady. What does that stand for?
That's a great question. I don't think it's an acronym. It's, but I think it might stand for internet because, but it does. I'm not really sure, Doc. Why you stumped me?
I get a little.
And welcome back. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. I get a little frustrated when I see these folks, especially in education, put together these fancy terms that are like not grammatically correct when we're trying to teach our kids how to read and how to be ready.
But it's a lowercase I, so it's not the first person pronoun.
All right. So
sound like Tiffany Haddish.
So that makes sense.
It's the trademark for the company.
That makes sense. How are we? How is the information inputted into the system? I'm assuming that the students are actually working at the computer, doing these tests, and that's how the information is inputted.
So the information we have access to, iReady has a dashboard that all teachers, principals, and central office administration can access. But in addition to that, it also interacts with PowerSchool. So it's all that data is also found in our PowerSchool platform.
All right. And what tool are we going to use to evaluate this program, and at what intervals do we evaluate this program? Because, though the original input information is disappointing, obviously, but we know we were dealing with the pandemic and so on. These claims of all of these children making these 1-year gains in less than a year kind of makes the hair on my neck stand up, and kind of, I kind of want to question, how accurate that information is, because if it is that accurate, why haven't we been doing that for the last 50 years? Why haven't our children been making those gains in the past? So how are we evaluating that and this tool, and how are teachers incorporating that evaluation process?
So we have focus groups of teachers and coaches that we use to in our pilot of several programs, and they were the ones who chose this, and we continue to check in with them. I think, Mr. Goldson, the real key is going to be how our students do on the Smarter Balanced exam. That will really tell. Now, we have to compare that with what they look like in the beginning of the school year. So this is going to be a tough year. I'm not going to mince words here. Our students came back far lower than we had expected, but in time, we'll see. But the real true test measure of how students progress isn't just the program the kids are using, but it's really the teacher in front of them. So if we have great teachers in front of our kids, regardless of the program, our students will succeed. And one of the things I guess I should also say, I don't know if the board knows this or not, but since the beginning of the year, we've had 0 vacancies in secondary mathematics. And you'll be hard pressed to find another urban school district that can boast that. We did have 2 teachers leave during the school year, but we replaced them immediately. So we're really happy with our recruitment and our retention efforts right now.
That's terrific. So Smarter Balance is going to give us one data point as an evaluation tool of how iReady is really working or not, right?
Right, but we also have our formative assessments. We have our IABs, and we have our fact fluency skills that will also give us information as to how effective the programs are. And right now, we're seeing good stuff.
So we're paying a lot. We're paying a lot of money for this program. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that someone's going to eventually come back to us and say, okay, here are the data points that show whether or not this program is effective. Someone's going to do that eventually. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. And I think my last question is, you mentioned special education. And I know I've been out for a little while, but I thought there was some sort of discussion around using different phrasing to describe special education. Or did I miss that somewhere? What's that?
Students with disabilities.
That seems just as bad. Is there another way? Is there another way to describe this programming without making these kids kind of? I mean, if I were in a program that said I was a kid with with disability or I was in a special education program, that would be frustrating for me, and certainly become a point of teasing from other students. We know how bad that could get at times. So I thought that this board had a discussion around, and I didn't think it was just a student with disabilities. I thought it was some other phrasing. Am I wrong on that?
Sometimes we utilize the terms students with special needs, but I think it's only in the reporting. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. I have a lot of background noise. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I mean, again, you know, the term that we utilize is students with disabilities, and oftentimes interchangeably you'll hear students with special needs. Certainly, I think that only you'll hear some of those terms utilized more so when we're reporting data, similar to when we're reporting with the subgroups like multilingual learners and students with disabilities, but that's not something that we're utilizing, you know, outside of some of the reporting of the data, if you will.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Go ahead, Dr. Benitez, and then I don't see any other hands, so I guess I'll go last. I'll leave my stuff for last.
Okay, first of all, Ken, it's great to see you. It's great to see that you remain with all that energy. And before I go to my concerns, I want to say that listening to you talk about the opportunities that teachers have had to develop reminded me why I remain in New Haven Public Schools, regardless of salary, conditions, any of that, because I felt that as a teacher, I was valued, and as a professional, I was grown. So congratulations to your department for continuing to do that. That is something that gives me a lot of hope, because I do believe that it is our duty to promote the development of professionals who work with our students. But now let me go to the other side. Dr. Joyner said 20 kids. Well, let me tell you, if you are in middle school or high school, you might have 125 in front of you every day. And those kids are as different as they are from each other. And those teachers who teach math have to figure out where they are, what is their zone of proximal development, and how they can get them to where they go. And I'm wondering if with the ASR money, you have been able to do anything to support the monitoring of the students' usage and following up on what kids may need from a live individual, if you have been able to acquire other people to support your teachers in this area.
Well, we have, obviously we have our coaching, the math coaches, as well as our lead high school math teachers. The data that these two programs give us is amazing. So we are able to drill down to the teacher level, the student level. It's very easy to say, you know, which students are on for the appropriate amount of time, which students need more, which teachers has students that are doing well, which teachers has students who do not spend enough time on. So the monitoring is definitely available, and it's very easy to access.
I'm sorry, what I asked was, have you been able to get additional people? Because clearly it's a challenge. Kids have fallen behind, and I'm just wondering if funds have been accessible to your department to acquire additional people or provide additional time for teachers to work with kids. I'd rather hear more about additional people because our teachers are spent, but if you can clarify on that.
So with both programs, we've been able to provide additional professional development for teachers so that they are up to date on how it works. The professional development has been longitudinal. So as questions and issues arise, we're able to address those immediately. We also have academies that we're offering this year. And In the first round of Academies, the math department offered 4, and we're offering another 4 this round, and they're extremely well attended and well received. So they've definitely been culture changing.
Dr. Tracy?
So may I say, in answer to Dr. Benitez's question, through the grant, we had to put aside several $1 million to the academic department for recovery and loss, whether it's in literacy, math, whatever the area is. So I think in one of the grants, $17 million is put aside. I don't think the challenge is funds right now, because we do have the funds to do the recovery, acceleration, loss of learning. The challenge, Dr. Benitez, is finding personnel. There's that challenge in finding even tutors. And many schools, when they find tutors, they send them in, we process and we do all that to make sure they're tutors. That's a challenge in finding human capital. But the money is there and available. Evie, we told Evie she's swimming in money, but we can't find the personnel. So that is there.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Benitez and Dr. Tracy. I have a couple of questions and then a comment. You said a lot throughout the presentation, more than 50% of students. Do we have those numbers? Does more than 50% mean 51%, 85%, 95%? Do we?
Well, I use the median data, which means 50% is on one side of that percentage and 50% is on the other side of the percentage.
So we don't have like exact numbers of.
Oh, we can, yes, absolutely, when we drill down, sure.
Okay, that would be good to know, just to have that information. Also, the first thing I want to do, actually, I have my notes, but I want to congratulate the teachers that you highlighted in your presentation. Congratulations to them all. The other thing is, the other question I had was, we everything now is before COVID and after COVID, right? We measure everything now that way. Do we have the figures? Can we compare this to before COVID times, or did we not have those assessments?
We didn't use these programs prior to COVID. However, we did, we have our formative testing data, for instance, our high school skills assessments, our fact fluency assessments, and our smarter balanced formative assessments. And from that, yeah, the disparity is huge.
Okay. All right, and then the last thing is just a comment, and I don't mean it to sound, I want to say this in the most loving way, I guess,
Sure.
But I just don't know how else to put it. The slides where you were showing the statistics between the different races and ethnicities, I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't find a way to show the data together, knowing that the population that we serve. You
I
put
concur.
the Latino and Hispanic kids on a completely different slide. And to me, it's just, is that the culture of our district where, everyone is all of you and then we are them or separate? I just want to make sure that we're not creating that culture within the district, and something like this to me says that that's what's happening.
It's a problem. It's a statewide and a census problem and a problem with the program, and we are working to fix it. That it is not our goal to keep the way I presented this data that way.
Yeah, and I understand.
It's as disturbing to me as it is to you. I can promise you
that the state would, require for you to collect the data in a certain way. But when we're making presentations and putting this information out into the community, we should make an effort to make sure that we're all counted the same way.
Okay.
Noted. May I answer that, President Rivera?
Yeah, so, go ahead, and then Mr. Golson has a comment or a question.
One of the things we do, we are told to do subgroup data. So the state has subgroups. We just finished recently with the quarterly, what do you call it, Eva? The quarterly presentation, the quarterly monitoring meeting with the state. I send it all to the board too. They do ask for the subgroup data. That's why we have everything in one and then break out according to subgroup, breakout according to male, female, we break out those so people get a sense to see how each group is performing. So it's not a matter of sticking out a group here and there, it's just a matter of the way it is, just a matter of reporting. But we do have where it's all. And then
I understand that. I understand that, Dr. Tracy. And like I said, I understand that the state wants it collected a certain way. But if those two slides hit me that way, I'm sure others are going to feel the same way. It feels like we're not considered one of you all.
So the board
that's my only comment. It's not, I don't want to belabor it. I don't want it to sound like an attack. I don't want it to be, like I said, I wanted to say this with the most loving way that I could, but I feel like it needs to be said. And I feel like you need to hear it.
Thank you. And I'm going to say, as we move forward in reporting data, if the board wishes for us to just report all, we will report all. But every time we report all, we're always asked, so what about the performance of this group?
No, and that's okay. It's fine to list the different, like you did in that first spreadsheet, but we were completely we were the outcast in this, I feel like. Mr. Golton?
Thank you, Madam President. And not to belabor the point, I think that Mr. Matthews did, when he introduced that slide, did mention that it was uncomfortable for him, but that it was a different category of reporting through the system, and that's why he was doing it. I mean, I guess the question is, I mean, the first slide was based on race, and that second slide was not based on race. I guess Hispanic is not considered a race. So I guess I understand your sensitivity to that, and hope that we could find a way as a district to figure out how to fix that.
Thank you, Mr. Golton. Ms. Velasquez, did you have your hand up? No? Dr. Joyner?
One of the sad things about this country's history is that we can't separate stuff like that from the fact that over the last 300 some years, certain groups have been colonized, oppressed, and enslaved. And if we as a board decide that we want the data, we know we have to meet federal and state guidelines. Can't get around that. But if we decide that we want things reported in a particular way, then we can have it done that way, because New Haven has always been the leader when it comes to issues like that. Essentially, personally, I believe that when that stuff first started, you had well-meaning people trying to set up a system whereby people who had been colonized, oppressed, and enslaved could catch up, but not recognizing the fact that even though they were no longer colonized and enslaved, they still were oppressed. And they were inferior schools, and inferior housing, and so on. So it's a long history. I'm sorry I wasn't in the last meeting for African American History Month, because I mean, that explains it. In every culture where people have had a position of oppression, they have been behind in terms of achievement. And even when they came from the same so-called race. And the sad thing about it is that we're supposed to be a scientific community, and we still talk about races when there's only one. You know, they're subspecies, but there's only one race, and the first group of people came out of Africa. We're all Africans, and it didn't have a name at the time, so we all come from that continent we now call Africa. And there's no appreciable difference between people biologically, but there is an appreciable difference between how they're treated and how they continue to be treated over time. And all one has to do is look at who counts as a human being in the world. And that's real. And what we ought to be doing is challenging our kids to understand that the greatest way of getting even is through excellence. That they have an opportunity that ancestors could only dream of. To be able to go to school, to have free books, to have teachers, and to have people who are willing to step up for them when they need support. And so I'm with you, Madam President. We don't have to be like everybody else. We have to meet the federal and state and local guidelines, but in terms of how we treat our kids, and we cannot run away from the truth of how certain groups in this society have been treated over space and time and continue to be treated over space and time. But we can't give the kids an excuse for not taking advantage of current opportunities. And that's what I would have said for Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Well, I guess we did belabor the issue, but
Yeah, there's
okay.
some issues need to be belabored.
Thank you all. Dr. Joyner, Dr. Tracy, does that conclude your report?
Yes, Madam President, that's it.
Okay. For President's report, just really quick, remember that we have our retreat on Wednesday, March 16th. It's scheduled for 4 to 8 p.m. Could be that we're out a little bit earlier. That depends on, the presentations and the discussion. So we'll see how that goes. Attorney Mooney and Attorney Sierra Milan would be the presenters for this first round. Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't available for the last meeting. I did read about the resolution that we passed around the mask mandate. I also read, and so secondhand, obviously, I read that there was going to be, we were going to use the board meetings to update the board and the public on progress on that mask mandate. I don't see it on the agenda, so I'm wondering, did I read it wrong, or was that, are we going to be doing that, keeping our board members, our students, parents, and the general public updated very regularly? It said every board meeting in the press accounts on our status related to the mask mandate.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Mayor Elifer, I'm guessing you have a response, or is it a question?
Yeah, I have a quick response, and it's just technically it's not a part of the agenda, but I'm happy to answer their question. That I checked in with Director Bond this morning, and we had our weekly COVID meeting. Cases have gone up since last week. There were 442 cases that were reported from March 5th to March 7th, compared to 79 cases from February 25th to February 28th. There's a lag time in which we receive the data. Both tests and cases increased significantly for this period of time. And also the CDC moved our level from low to moderate. So at this point, the health department's assessment is to keep it in place. But we will continue to keep folks updated, and happy, the health director in the future can come to a meeting if necessary. Obviously, I think all of us want to move beyond masks, but given the high percentage of New Haven children that are classified as vulnerable for a variety of different health reasons, we're particularly sensitive to lifting it at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That was very helpful, Madam President. I'm hoping that we could have that sort of report maybe at every meeting, so that people are clear on where we are and what the recommendations are moving forward. I'm hoping that we could add that to the agenda as a regular item until we get to the point. And again, even though I'm not quite sure where I land on mask mandate, I'm neutropenic. I don't have any white blood cells at this point. I'm going to be wearing masks for a very long time to keep myself safe. And so I understand that, but I'm one individual of 130,000 other individuals in this city, and 20,000, 17, 18,000 students and 5,000 employees or whatever. And I'm sure we probably have that many opinions on this mask mandate. So if we could just keep people educated and informed, that would be helpful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Okay, let's start report. Mr. Wilcox.
It'll be very brief because we've not met since the last board meeting. Our next meeting is this Thursday at 5 o'clock.
And citywide school building committee report?
That committee met last Thursday as scheduled. The information from that meeting is posted on our meeting site, which also includes the stewardship report, which dives into building issues and things like that. So I invite everybody to take a look at that.
Thank you. And finance and operations.
Looks like Mr.
Oh,
Goldston
Mr.
has a
Goldston,
question.
yep.
Can I just ask a question or put this on the radar for the future? What's happening with the 2 schools that were declared uninhabitable for students? Do we have a plan for those? Are we working on a plan for those? I mean, I don't need to hear the information tonight, but I'd like to hear that sometime in the future. Thank you.
I agree, definitely. And I think part of what we're doing is waiting for the engineering report that was supposed to be looking at all the buildings in the district. And I think that'll be part of it, but I will specifically ask for an update on those at either finance and operations or the citywide.
Thank you. The only reason I bring that up, Madam President, is that I look out my bathroom window every morning and I can see the school from my window. So I'm just constantly wondering what's going on with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Finance and operations.
This report will be brief. The only discussion item we had at the last meeting was just an update on the public budget meetings that the district had. I attended them, and particularly in the first meeting, there was a lot of good public questions and a lot of good answers from the district, but that was the only discussion item that we talked about. So that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Governance report, Dr. Benitez.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and everyone else. Yes, we met last Monday, March 7th, and pretty much most of the items that we discussed were ongoing things that are happening with policy manual, the transgender document, guidance document, and the bylaws for student board representatives. All those things were reported to be things that are ongoing in development and working on them without a final report on the 7th, because they are doing things that require more time than what the date we met. But we also, at the previous meeting, we had requested Ms. Joseph Lumpkin to help us with drafting a reentry from suspension plan. And she did a very good job at presenting that to the team and explaining what were some of the things they wanted to get principals and teams at schools to do in order to help students come back to school, and also interventions with families to prepare them for to prepare their kids for reentry. She also had Ms. Camille Thorne, who is one of our people expert on restorative practices, present to us, and they pretty much explained how this theoretical framework would support a reentry plan for suspension, students suspended, that would ensure that they will remain in school and not have repeated suspensions. This will be something that they are preparing, and hopefully we'll have a presentation for the full board at later in the year. If there's any questions.
Dr. Jordan?
Abby, I sent you and Dr. Benitez, I sent you and Dr. Yarborough a copy of the philosophical statement for teaching and learning. And I hope that we can get some progress on that, because I think Ms. Velasquez has the rest of it. And I guess when we meet at Teach and Learn, we'll try to set a due date for final reading and review by the board so we can get it passed.
Yes, Dr. Joyner, at the last board meeting, I did report on teaching and learning about that, and we are aware. I did not include that in our governance because I wasn't sure if you were going to be there and did not discuss it with
I hear you.
with Tiffany, with Ms. Jackson, but I can ask Ms. Jackson to include that for our next meeting, and we definitely would welcome that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Food Service Task Group report, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, our food service task force met on last week, and the Food Gap Committee, that team debriefed and is now working on the next immediate opportunity to share food with an emphasis on ensuring that the word gets out to our families so that the food may be shared appropriately. They are also beginning work for summer planning. We also had a conversation around the kind of protocol or steps for checking on food quality and checking that the protocol is being followed. And the Food Services Task Force and Division of the school system will work on crafting information or notices to help students know how to communicate comments and questions and concerns. Students are invited to attend the Food Service Task Force meeting. And my understanding is that when it was in person, students did come, but that opportunity is still available now that we are in person. And as well, a representative from the City Health Department on behalf of the nurses working in our school was present, and we appreciate the work in collaboration around food allergies. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Yarbrough. Any questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Thank you.
Thank you. Executive session. Okay, with that, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006A regarding discussion concerning contractual agreements of public officers in the positions of Gemma Joseph Lumpkin, Chief of Youth, Family, and Community Engagement, Ms. Lisa Mack, Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations, Ms. Keisha Red-Hannons, Fidelis Velasquez, and Dr. Paul White, all assistant superintendents. For a second. And I will invite, I need to invite Dr. Tracy and Attorney Alexiadis. Mr. Wilcox?
Second.
It's been properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go into executive session. Dr. Yarbrough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Ms. Roman, Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. You should have your link in your email. So we'll see you there.
How to.
You're not on mute.
Also, I'm trying not to
Let me see. Just get Dr. Benitez a minute to come on. I think she was on her phone. We're not missing anyone else, right? We're all here. Okay, so we are out of executive session and back in regular session. There were no votes at the executive session. And I think what's left is just the possible action and discussion on the matters that were discussed in executive session. So what's left is to vote, and I guess I can do this individually, vote on the contracts and discuss them as needed.
Point of order, Madam President.
Mr. Bolton?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Are you saying on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 appointments, you plan to vote individually as opposed to a group?
Yes.
And you need a motion for that?
Yes, we do. Mr. Wilcox, did you have a?
Yeah, I would, my preference would be to vote on these as a group, but if people would like them separated out.
Is there?
The motion I'll make would be to approve the executive management contract renewals. In fact, I'd like to make a motion, and that is to approve that we approve the executive management contract renewals.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, we'll vote on the executive management contract renewals. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so those items pass.
Congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations, everybody. Keep up the good work.
Mr. Wilcox,
Thank you.
I was going to just say congratulations, and then I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Good night, everyone, and thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.